I'm opening the DES public hearing, calling it to order. My name is Lauren Nother. Can you all hear me okay? Yes. Beautiful. I work in the Solid Waste Management Bureau at the Department of Environmental Services. So I'm serving here as the presiding officer for this hearing. It's Wednesday, June 6th. As I said, 7:45. The date and time for the notice given was June 6th at 7:30, with the public hearing to be held at the town offices. We have moved to the middle school here at 16 East Road in Weare, New Hampshire, to accommodate a larger capacity crowd. This hearing is being held to receive public comment on an application for a solid waste standard permit submitted to the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services by Granite State Recycling, LLC, a New Hampshire limited liability company registered to do business in New Hampshire. Under New Hampshire Statute RSA 149M, our state's Solid Waste Management Act, and the Department's Solid Waste Administrative Rules, solid waste facility owners or operators are required to obtain a solid waste permit with our Department of Environmental Services. Granite State Recycling, LLC has submitted an application for a standard permit to operate a solid waste transfer facility located at 33 B&B Lane in Weare, New Hampshire. The application is under review by the Department of Environmental Services. The purpose of this hearing tonight is to receive oral testimony from the public regarding Granite State Recycling's application to help inform the department's review of that application. For the record, notice of this hearing was published in the Messenger, a local circular, on May 4th, 2018. We also left somebody at the other building at the town offices to direct people here, and we purposely started the meeting a little bit later so that those folks had time to get over here so they wouldn't miss the hearing. Let me do some introductions, please. So we have a number of people here from the Department of Environmental Services. First and foremost, sitting at the table here with me is permit engineer Todd Moore, who's also the administrator of the Solid Waste Management Bureau. We have a number of other DES staff and an intern here to assist in making this process run smoothly. Brad Flagg, our intern, is helping at the sign-in table, as is Jamie Colby, another person in our permitting bureau, and our administrator, Pam Hoyt-Dennison, who's raised her hands in the back here too. If you have any questions about some of the technical things, I don't mean the technical things on the application, but about this process, where you can get another copy of the public notice, they'll help you at the table there. We also have with us representatives of the applicant here seated to my left. We have Martin O'Brien, who's the manager of Granite State Recycling, LLC. We also have Lori Lee Mather, who's a project engineer with Geo Insight Incorporated, and we have the senior engineer with Geo Insight, Michael Penny. So, as noticed on the agenda, we have three parts, and it's a pretty simple agenda. But first, Todd Moore from DES will explain why an application for a solid waste permit is required for Granite State Recycling's facility, and he will provide a brief description of the criteria that the department uses to determine whether to approve the application, to deny the application, or approve the application with conditions. Todd is also going to explain where we are in the application review process at this point and what the next anticipated steps will be. Secondly, representatives of the applicant, Granite State Recycling, will provide a description of the proposed facility for which a standard permit is being sought. After each of these presentations, we will accept brief questions from the audience. These questions should be limited to clarifying questions regarding the presentations themselves. Please identify yourself by name and street address or affiliation and speak clearly into the microphone if you have questions to clarify the various presentations. So the third part of the agenda will move on to accepting public comment on the application for the record. There is a tape recording going of this hearing, so again, I ask you to speak clearly and slowly enough Anyone wishing to make these oral comments can fill out a yellow card. I think many of you have, and DES personnel will bring them up, and you will be called upon in the order that we receive the cards. Because we have a crowd here of, I estimate, over 50 people, I'm going to ask initially that folks keep their comments to about 3 minutes. If you can't be done in 3 minutes, I'll recycle your card. Just say, I think I have more to offer, and we'll put you at the back of the queue and revisit further comments at the end so that everybody has an opportunity to speak. Please know that you can also submit written comments to us, and I'll be going over that at the end. There'll be some instructions for providing your written testimony. They are specified in the notice of public hearing, which we have at the information table, and we made more copies if you didn't get a chance to pick one of those up. To provide an oral comment, again, you're going to fill out the card. You are then going to be automatically entered onto a list to receive a copy of the DES decision that's ultimately made on this application. If you do not wish to speak, but wish to receive a written copy of the decision, we have a clipboard, and please fill out your name and contact information so you can get a copy. You can be on our mailing list for a copy of the written decision by DES. If you are speaking and providing oral testimony, we encourage you to also submit your testimony in writing. It's just a good way to a fail-safe so that we have your comments in writing. Written comments, and this is very important, can be submitted to the department on or before June 13th, 2018 at 4 p.m. That is 1 week from today. Thus, the deadline for your submission of written comments will close at 4 p.m. on June 13th, 2018. And again, the directions for submitting written comments are in the public notice. Copies are available at the information table. You will be included in your list of contacts automatically if you do the yellow testimony card. So, if you're, again, I noticed some other people are coming in. If you wish to not speak but to receive a copy of the decision, you're going to fill out the clipboard that's over there on my right. Are there any questions about the procedure so far? It would be best if you would. Thank you for your patience.
It's my understanding that it's appropriate if your name is called to speak that you can defer or pass on your time to some other person who has more information.
I will allow that, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So some logistics. Emergency exits, you can see the signs at the back of the room here and probably also where you came in, but the quickest way out is there. In the event of an emergency that requires evacuation of the building, the hearing will be automatically suspended pending further notice. Please exit quickly but quietly, and I'm going to ask that folks gather outside. I'm pointing to the front of the building here, just because we'd like to know that everybody is out. I'm going to ask Todd to wait and be last coming out to make sure everyone's ushered outside. Brad's going to bring the written paperwork on his way out so we can have a list of persons pretty much and know who's here and who may not be. We want to make sure everybody gets out. So the restrooms are located outside the door you came in. To my right, your left, you'll see the girls' room and the boys' room. Again, we are recording what is being said, and it will be made available on the Department of Environmental Services website under the Solid Waste Bureau Hot Topics page. When speaking, you're going to use the microphone and speak clearly. So we will now have DES Administrator Todd Moore explain why the application for a solid waste permit is required for this proposed facility operation and how the department will review that application. Todd.
Good evening. So I'm Todd Moore. I work for the Department of Environmental Services in the Waste Management Division for the Solid Waste Management Bureau. What we do is we regulate the handling of solid waste. One of the primary ways that we do that is through regulating facilities that handle solid waste, and we do that through a permit system. Granite State Recycling has submitted a permit application. They would be one of the facilities that we regulate. The types of facilities would include something like a landfill, processing and treatment, could be a composting facility, or a collection, storage, transfer facility, which is what Granite State Recycling has applied for. Other criteria that help define a facility in our regulations include the capacity of the facility. For a collection, storage, transfer facility, capacity is defined in two ways. Its throughput capacity. Granite State Recycling has asked for 300 tons per day throughput capacity, and also its waste storage capacity. Granite State Recycling has asked for 1,600 cubic yards of storage capacity. Another one of the criteria is the service area of the facility. Granite State Recycling, like most of the commercial facilities that we permit, has asked for an unlimited service area, meaning there's no restriction from where they can receive the waste. There are also, another thing that defines the facility is what types of waste they would be authorized to accept. Granite State Recycling has requested to be authorized to accept single-stream recyclable materials, municipal solid waste, and construction and demolition debris. So based on what Granite State Recycling would like to do, they require a permit from our group, the Solid Waste Management Bureau. First step of that is, of course, fill out an application. The application includes forms, plans, and information that we require in order to evaluate whether the facility can be built and operated in accordance with our solid waste management rules. We've received that application. We deemed it complete, and once we do that, we put a notice out that the application is open for public comment, and we schedule a public hearing, and that's the point we're at now. We are concurrently working on a technical review, comparing the application against the regulations. We're also soliciting the public comment, and we will consider all public comments in our ultimate decision. I'll describe a little bit more about the next steps on the decision in a moment. Now, when we're doing our review, there are a number of criteria, and I'm going to briefly describe them to help provide context for what we're soliciting comments on to help us focus our review. There is a public benefit requirement. Any facility that is required to get a permit has to demonstrate that they provide a public benefit. For a collection, storage, transfer facility such as Granite State Recycling, there is a prescriptive public benefit requirement in that they would only be allowed to dispose of or send for disposal in a New Hampshire disposal facility, a New Hampshire landfill, no more waste than they received from New Hampshire generators. If they do that, they're presumed to meet the public benefit requirement. We also have siting, design, operation, and closure requirements. I'll describe a little bit about what each of those are. And there, we also have a business and personal background check, focusing on the integrity of the business and the operators of the facility. Now for siting criteria, we have setback requirements. People are generally familiar with those. There's plenty of setback requirements in local regulations as well. For collection, storage, transfer facilities, for example, the facility waste handling areas are required to be at least 50 feet from any property line at the property. We have design criteria. We need design information to make sure that it can accommodate the receiving. So waste receiving areas like a tipping floor or a sorting area, and waste storage areas. Granite State Recycling has applied to have some storage inside of a building and other storage outside of the building in closed containers, closed movable containers. We also have operating criteria. We require that each facility develop an operating plan, and that operating plan has things describing such as, specifically describing what wastes the facility is authorized to take, the procedures that they go through to ensure that they are only accepting those authorized wastes, and also procedures to address if waste comes in that they're not authorized to take, what they do at that point. Send it back with the person who tried to deliver it to them, or set it aside and send it for proper disposal. We also, for operating requirements, we require facilities to control a number of things, and the standard is to the greatest extent practicable. And these are things like odor, litter, and vectors. And for example, Granite State Recycling has proposed to use methods such as keeping the sorting operations inside and all storage either inside or in closed containers to limit odors and attracting nuisance vectors like flies or birds. Now we also have closure requirements. When it comes time to close a facility, the owner-operator is required to remove all the waste and essentially return the site back to its original level of cleanliness. And they're also required to carry financial assurance to guarantee the cost that it would take to do that, to remove all the waste and return the site back to its original condition. They have to carry that in the event that the facility goes bankrupt or whatever, and the state has to step in. We take that financial assurance and close the facility. That was a brief overview of the types of things that we look for when we are reviewing an application. I wanted to add one thing. We've received a number of phone calls and inquiries on this application already, and one of the inquiries has been relative to local approvals. We understand that there's a local approval process for this facility. Essentially, our permitting system would be separate from any local or any other state or federal requirements, separate and independent. Now that's what we will be reviewing while we're reviewing their application. Once we are finished with our review, and it will be after everybody has submitted comments and we've considered all the comments, we will issue a final decision. We have three options. We can either deny the application, approve the application outright, or approve the application with conditions. When it comes to that point, we'll issue a decision, and we will also we will have public comments. We'll issue a companion document responding to the public comments. And that is the brief overview. I'm available to answer specific questions if people want details, but I don't want to take up too much of your time for speaking. Yes?
I have a simple question. Can you provide a permit for a use that's not allowed in the town of Weare? Meaning, if it's not covered by that site plan over there, can you allow that function to carry on through your permit?
Okay. I'm not sure if that mic is working. Good. But so I'll just repeat the question, and that's an excellent question relative to.
Or is it working? Is it working?
Oh, there we go.
I think you got to be about a quarter-inch away.
But let me see if I can summarize your question. You said, can we issue a permit for a facility that has either not obtained or is in conflict with a local requirement?
Inconsistent.
Inconsistent. Actually, in any of those cases, we could issue a decision, issue a permit, but that would not preclude the owner or operator from obtaining and correcting that situation on the local level.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that if the deficiencies are identified or inconsistencies, that would stop the permitting process. I mean, I hope to be up here in a few minutes to speak on these because they didn't follow the guidance and direction by the planning board. So I'll speak a little bit later when my turn is up.
Okay. And we'll try to answer a little bit more in depth to that question. I think we'll do a little, you could probably ask it again. Oh.
So you talked about financial assurances for if the site's closed and containing the site and cleaning that up. Does that cover any contaminations if it goes into any of the watershed areas?
No, that would not be for a release or any sort of contingency. It's solely for cleaning up, the waste that they're authorized to have there. Correct.
Thanks.
And I would just add, that's not to say that that situation would be ignored by DES. We have plenty of other regulations relative to addressing spills and leaks and things like that.
Who controls the money that's supposed to be put aside for that?
This is the financial assurance. The control is, there are a number of different financial mechanisms, bonds, letters of credit. Essentially, it's set aside so that the state has control. We would not release that until a facility has closed and we're confident that they have taken all the waste and the site has been cleaned up. Only at that point would we release them from the permit and our ability to enforce that permit.
I'm sorry, I wanted to make sure I understood the part about the cleanliness. You're talking about just the site?
Just the facility, yeah, the site, the
What
property.
about the surrounding area? Is there a baseline of water tests that can be collected so that when they are finished, you can also determine if they've contributed to contamination of the watershed?
For a collection, storage, transfer facility, there is no specific requirement for any sort of baseline or continuing groundwater monitoring.
I would like to know, how long is this permit for?
Excellent question. Solid waste permits do not have an expiration date. So once a permit is issued, it's there in perpetuity until such time either DES pulls it. We have criteria in our rules, upon which we could pull a permit for certain performance measures, or the facility closes, goes through the closure, and cleans up the site.
How do they assess the amount of money that is set aside for a potential cleanup? Is that money held in escrow? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it's escrow is one of the mechanisms. So it is set aside, escrow, bond, something like that, to determine the amount with the application. And the application is available online, and I think there's a copy maybe locally available as well. The application includes the cost estimate to close the facility. That is one of the things that we review. We check that amount, and then we'll check it against the financial assurance.
Who assesses? How do you assess? Like is it square footage in the facilities as far as dollar amounts? How do you assess the amount of the cleanup?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to do would be to look at the form in the application, because it's laid out very prescriptive. This type of waste, this amount, it costs this much to load it, transport it, dispose of it. So we do have a system, and it's described in the application using our form.
How is one of these permits transferred to a different owner?
I could explain that. I don't want to take up all the time. Essentially, there is a permit application process to transfer a permit like this to a different owner. That would include the background checks of the new owner, and we would not transfer responsibility until we were confident that the new owner could comply with the permit.
But there's no other public meetings like this, it's just the DES decision.
I think that's correct. I do not believe there is any required public comment. Pam, you want to correct me on that?
It's at the discretion of the commissioner. The public hearing and comment on permit transfer is not required, but it's at the discretion of the commissioner.
Okay. Just make sure everybody heard that. What Pam said is that to transfer a permit, public hearing, public comment is not required, but at the discretion of our director, we may require it.
Hi. Are these sites monitored on a regular basis by your department to make sure that they're withholding to all the, things that were cited in the permit? Who keeps them honest after the fact?
Yeah. Our bureau, we have a permitting side. We also have a compliance assurance side. So we have the traditional inspectors who actually go out, visit facilities, check what they're doing against permits. We also have other means to check. Part of the permit is the permittee is required to record and report to us certain data. We can compare those reports against what their permitted, say, waste receipt rates might be. So yes, we do have a group and a system for assuring compliance.
What's the average cycle in a year, calendar year, for a site inspection?
We do not get to every facility every year. We have hundreds of facilities, yes.
When we're talking about monitoring, are monitoring wells included in the permit?
No. Well, I would say that for collection, storage, transfer facilities, there's no automatic requirement to install groundwater monitoring wells. And I would just, as a little follow-up onto the how often do we get, like, that would say, physically visit a site. We definitely do not get to every site every year, but every facility is required every year to submit an annual report to us, and we do a review of the majority of those reports.
So under this permitting process, you're strictly concerned what comes in. So if these trucks are leaking and they're dripping all over our roads throughout town to get to Gould Road and this facility, the damage is done, you have no control over it, and we, the residents, pay the price, correct?
Correct in that, yes, we do not regulate the over-the-road transport.
Is there a site condition that would warrant, say in this example here, that's sensitive, it's over an aquifer? So still no groundwater testing over an aquifer with all the swamps surrounding this, all the wetlands?
There are specific requirements relative to aquifers in our solid waste permitting requirements, which may be different. I understand that the town of Weare has a local aquifer ordinance. This facility is not located over one of the aquifers of a type that would require special conditions in this permit. At the state level, it's an aquifer, I believe it's called GAA or GA1. Some of the higher orders of aquifers may require special protections. This area is not underlain by one of those types of aquifers. So,
and the other question I had, is this an initial application or is this a re-application?
Yeah, this is an initial application for a new facility.
Okay, thank
yes.
you.
Yeah.
Just a question as far as cleanup. So if the application doesn't go through, my understanding is that the facility has been used for waste.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the actions as far as cleaning up that site and bringing it back to a state that's appropriate?
So it wouldn't be through the permit, of course, if a permit wasn't issued, but we have other mechanisms to deal with non-permitted facilities and waste handling requirements. Yeah.
I stink at talking, but I have on the internet right here from 2011 that there is a protection of the aquifer in that area. It says Gould Road, it says Daniels Lake, and it lists other protection places. And if you scroll down here, it says all the different stuff, all the different, oh, I can't see it, wait a minute. It talks about groundwater contamination, and it says, where am I? Anyways, it lists like an ordinance of different things that you can't put on there.
I think what would be very helpful to us would be if you could, as a comment, get us that web link.
I can
print
it off
Okay.
for you and mail it.
That would be great. And then we can review it and make sure that our assessment is appropriate.
Hi. You mentioned that the inspection process may happen once a year, but may not. I was also curious, what exactly is the inspection process for hazardous materials, potential lead paint, asbestos coming in from construction, or whatever else might be in solid waste, which it could be an infinite number of things.
Yep. Yeah, particularly relative to asbestos lead paint, in that the facility has requested to receive construction and demolition debris. That is something that you might see in construction and demolition debris. So we would ensure that the operating plan has requirements for them to vet the sources of the material and also inspect it as it's tipped to ensure that they're not accepting, they have not applied to be able to accept asbestos waste. So that would not be authorized. So they would need to try to prevent it from receiving the facility through any number of things, educating the people who deliver waste to them, and also inspecting loads as they're tipped. And then having procedures in place such that if asbestos does arrive at the facility, that it's properly handled, set aside, and disposed of properly. Well, we ensure that the permit and the operating plan has requirements that, yes, they are required to follow, and if we were to inspect them, we would inspect to make sure that they are following those requirements. Does that make sense? Yeah. For instance, DES would not have a staff person at the site monitoring the loads that come in to ensure that there was no asbestos. Yeah. Correct. Yes.
What is the weight of the violation before you would give consequences for not following the guidelines? I know that there are many different ways that a consequence is weighted. What is the consequence for not following the permit?
There's a lot of variabilities in that question. I would say, to answer that question in general, I would look at New Hampshire's Compliance Assurance Response Policy, which describes how we would go through an analysis to determine the appropriate response depending on the type of violation. Did they submit a report late, or did they accept asbestos waste when they were not supposed to? Those types of things are considered in our response.
Thanks, everybody, for those questions regarding Todd Moore's presentation and clarifying it. At this point, we'll move to the presentation by the representatives of Granite State Recycling. And after this presentation, you will have equally a chance to ask clarifying questions. When that's done, we'll move on to your comments, your substantive comments on the project application. I'm going to remind folks, I was a little lackadaisical. We didn't have names given, but that's not the formal comment. It was just clarifying questions. But it would be really handy if you would at least give your name. That would be really great. So we'll turn it over to the Granite State Recycling representatives.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Penny, as I was introduced earlier, and I'm an engineer from Geo Insight. We're representing GSR here tonight. I'm a New Hampshire professional engineer. I've got over 30 years of experience, most of those years dealing with solid waste. I've worked at many transfer stations and landfills. I've worked for municipalities, for private concerns, for solid waste companies, for public interest groups. I've worked on both sides of the fence. I've worked for solid waste issues on behalf of people wanting the solid waste thing to go through, and I've worked on behalf of groups that were trying to prevent something to go through. So I think I have a pretty broad understanding of a lot of things that are going through your mind, and hopefully we'll have more discussions about that. But very good questions so far tonight. Geo Insight was hired by GSR in the fall of 2017 and asked us to, Geo Insight was hired by GSR in the fall of 2017 to help assist with its permitting its current operations. And those were similar to operations that were occurring in Milford by GSR at the time. During our initial discussions with Marty O'Brien, who's here tonight, we were really impressed by the number of years he's been doing this. We're pretty careful about who we pick as clients, and also the pride that he takes in his operations. Our reputation is, goes hand in hand with the kind of people we work with, so we're fairly selective on projects we get involved with. We visited the site ourselves, and then started engaging GSR in a number of questions and discussions about what their plans were. Then we started holding our own discussions with DES to kind of say, okay, this is what we see happening and where this is going, trying to get some initial feedback from DES if this looked like something that they thought was within the boundaries of what could happen, and that those initial interactions were positive. Because we were then at that point satisfied, we moved forward with assisting GSR with their facility, pursuing their permit. And the permit first started out by a permit by notification, but then that was kind of transitioned into the standard permit that is now in with DES, because we kind of went through enough time that we just jumped forward to the larger and more complex and comprehensive permit for a number of reasons, which is better. As DES has already talked about tonight, as part of their review, they looked at the existing facility just like we would have, and they are in the process of their review of the standard permit application, and it has been found complete administratively so far, so that's a good step that, as far as we're concerned in terms of the technical part of it, it's a good hurdle to be over. This public hearing isn't because what's being proposed is some horrible, terrible thing. It's a normal thing that, as Mr. Moore said, there are many of these facilities all over New Hampshire and all over New England and all over the country. So the public hearing is to get more input about this facility. It's not because it's some sort of environmental travesty that deserves very special attention. It's a pretty normal facility that's being considered here. GSR's standard permit submittal is for 300 tons per day, up to 300 tons per day of single-stream recyclables, construction and demolition debris, and municipal solid waste, as DS already mentioned. However, it's really important to point out that their primary focus is recyclables. That's what they've been about, that's what they want to stay about, that's what they believe in. So municipal solid waste often just becomes part of that because they're trying to extract recyclables out of the municipal solid waste stream. Their intent is not to turn this into just a municipal solid waste facility. The 300 tons per day is quite a bit, but it's not all that big compared to a lot of other transfer stations that are out there. It will take GSR a long time to get there because of market share. The solid waste world is actually quite competitive. People might not understand that, but just because somebody wants to do something with certain types of waste, there's another entity out there that's going to compete with that if they think they're going to make money. So it's not a given that we'll reach 300 tons per day. We may never get halfway there. It may take years to get there. So this is definitely not something that's going to happen overnight. If the permit was approved in a month, you wouldn't see 300 tons per day there the next week. That would be virtually impossible. Currently, GSR intends to keep working with the same communities and groups that it's been dealing with at its previous facilities, and it will probably end up cutting back on some of those communities just to make its area more efficient and be able to focus on more local interactions and relationships. In Geo Insight's opinion, our technical review of the site and what GSR is planning to do, we've got some boards up that kind of illustrate the location of the facility from an aerial view with the surroundings, the zoning, but also more importantly the actual site itself, the layout and the building. There's a lot of things about the site that make this a very good location for a transfer facility, especially since they're doing everything inside on a floor. The operation that GSR presented to us in our experience of things we've seen is very well thought out and very orderly, how they're going to manage materials coming in and out, what they're going to do with them inside the building. It's a very good plan instead of a lot of facilities that I've worked at where it's It's just kind of more willy-nilly and very flexible every single day about what they're doing. This is a lot more specific about what happens inside and allows for a lot more control and care of the operations. DS mentioned previously, there is an operations plan that goes with all of these types of facilities, and GSR has one prepared also, and we help work on it. It has a lot of detail in it. I would encourage people to review it, and it addresses maybe some of the anxiety and questions that people might have here tonight. The blowing litter is the first one I'll talk about. That's a common concern about any kind of a solid waste facility. Here, we have materials that are going to be contained and kept inside the building until they're baled, and then when they're baled, that's when they'll be taken outside the building. So something that's in a bale and put in a container is very, very unlikely to have loose material that's going to be blowing around. And when materials are processed inside the building, it's going to be inside, and while the door's open, there might be some wind that came in or something like that, but it's largely going to be protected from the wind. So that's a very positive environment with regard to reducing blowing litter. Vector issues is the same thing. The way that rodents and birds, for example, are going to be managed at this facility is because everything is happening inside, and whatever is outside is going to be baled or in a container and really not accessible to those types of vectors. And the work that happens inside allows very tight control over whether anything like that is present, and then if it was, then pest control agencies are called to come in and try to deal with something if it even happens. Odors are really not expected to be significant based on the types of materials that GSR is going to be handling and the nature of their moisture content and how they're going to be received inside the building, and the rate or the speed at which they are baled and stored and then moved into storage for removal from the site. So this isn't a big pile of glop that sits on the floor for 4 days and festers. These are materials that are dealt with the day they come in, and they're managed immediately, so they're not really having a chance to organically start biodegrading or anything like that you might see in a normal, very large tipping facility where there's just piles and piles of material. This is a lot more selective operation where things are being quickly separated and managed and contained. Excuse me. The floor of this facility is a sealed concrete slab. The entire building is sealed. There's curbing that's at the doors to prevent any type of liquids from flowing outside. So this is really an excellent kind of an environment to handle anything that might have any free liquids. But free liquids are not expected with the types of materials that GSR is going to be handling. However, they do have contingency plans if something comes in and there's a puddle on the floor. It's contained with speedy dry or something like that to sop up the excess material, because they don't want to be walking and traveling around in any kind of liquid inside their building. They want to keep that floor as clean as possible. Fire safety is important with any transfer facility, and they have a fire safety protocol for anything that happens inside the building. They're ready to extinguish small fires. If they get a load that comes in that's smoking or seems hot, it will be refused. It won't be allowed to come in on the floor, and they have a special dumpster outside where that would be placed until the fire department was able to come there and assess it and put it out if needed. And that's kind of a common practice for most transfer stations. Noise from the operations will be mostly limited to the vehicles coming in and out of the facility, which won't be really any different than what's happening in that neighborhood right now. The noise inside the facility is really limited. There's not much that happens inside there that's noise intensive to begin with, and it's going to be enclosed, so we see that as a very limited chance of causing a nuisance noise, that operation that's proposed there. There will be some increased traffic because of the operation. The use of the facility will have a few more truck trips, obviously, than the previous owner, but based on the intended, even at full capacity, the intended throughput, the maximum average additional trucks per hour would only be 3. So in our assessment, that's a very insignificant number and doesn't really go past any thresholds that would require any specific evaluation or analysis with regard to traffic. I'm almost done, actually. So, GSR's site was approved by the EPA to meet the requirements of a no exposure certification with regard to stormwater requirements, which was it's kind of obvious because there's nowhere for stormwater to go on that site. The Northeast Resource Recovery Association, which is a large nonprofit organization dedicated to coordinate, educate, and provide technical assistance for recycling organizations, provided Mr. O'Brien with a very strong letter of commendation because of his relationship with that organization for such a long time. That's important to know. So Geo Insight would be very happy to answer any questions during the course of the evening, and appreciate your time.
So I'm just going to remind the audience, if you'd state your name, that would be great. These are only clarifying questions on the presentation. We are going to move after these clarifying questions, like you had with DES, to public comment. So there'll be time to speak. You've signed your speaker cards. We'll have them up here and call people. But this is open time for clarifying questions.
Hi, my name is Michael Agassi. Mr. Moore spoke of anything that was going to be outside of the facility would be in a container. Now, Mr. Penny spoke of bales. I'm not sure what a bale is, but I'm guessing it's exposed refuse that's been compacted, but not necessarily put in into a container. So that's my question.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so what will go outside in bales, there could be baled municipal solid waste. That might be something that would be outside, but that would be inside of a container itself. So it would be baled, wrapped, put in a container, and then when there's enough bales accumulated, then it would be hauled off. But also the other materials that would be outside would be baled recyclables, also being stored in a container. And if there were separated demolition debris, that would be in a roll-off, and the roll-off would be covered. So everything is contained and protected from the rain. Welcome.
I have extensive experience with Pennacook. And I know the trucks that go into Pennacook are not quiet. They leak. And when you bring in trailers of demolition, garbage, single stream, it has stuff all mixed up in it, and it drips all over the place, and they have contaminant problems. They have taken tremendous efforts to make sure that things are safe, but they still have problems. Part of the reason this company wants to be here is because they can no longer expand in Milford, and what they are going to be doing, 3 trucks an hour for 300 trucks in a day, that's going to be way more than that. But more concern I have is you're saying that there's not going to be any smells, there's not going to be anything left there at the end of the day. Are you planning to run this all 24/7? Because 300 trucks, and they are sizable trucks. I've seen what they do at Pennacook. Unless you're running that 24/7, you are not going to be able to get it all baled and out in one day.
So your question for clarification, if I could restate it,
Yes.
is what are the operating hours going to be?
And how are they going to handle all the spillage coming off of these trucks coming in? Because they do leak, and they are big, and they are contaminated.
Thank you.
My name is Jack Dearborn.
Hold on, I think we still want to respond to that question. Wait, did you want to respond to?
Yeah, I guess I can offer 2 clarifying points. The number of trucks per day isn't 300. It's at the most it would be 50, and the average would be closer to like 40 per day. A day. And the bales, the throughput, something part of what you said is correct, but there would be baling and accumulation of the bales, and then once a container was full, then it would be hauled out. So there would be trucks that would come in and trucks not going out until there was a specific container full, and then the container would go out with compacted bales, in certain situations.
Stephanie Zeidenboss, I live in South Weare. A couple of questions to that question you were just answering, and maybe you should hold the mic if this is your informative. Is this our question for him or from his presentation?
Well, they're clarifying questions about his presentation, but DES may be fielding some of the answers because it's about the application.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The hours were never covered also. What are the total hours that the facility would run day to day? That was one of the questions previously.
It's on the chart here.
It says,
Yeah.
yeah, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's what the
And I
sign
would
says.
say, yes, in the operating plan, that's one of the required sections, the operating plan. So the proposed hours are in there. So if there are comments about hours, that would be something that you would submit a comment to DES.
Oh, that's
relative
not
to
my
hours.
question. I was
No, I was
clarifying
just
for
more,
somebody else.
okay, back to you now.
I have a couple questions I would like clarified, actually lots, but I know I have not a lot of time. Does GES, do they regulate the trucks coming in? Like, what is their protocol for the acceptance of the recyclables that they will accept?
It's a waste.
If it's a free market, and is there any regulation that they hold on their trucks? If they're running a tight ship, how are they inspecting the vehicles for spillage? How do they handle that?
Are you talking about inspecting the material that they receive at the site?
The trucks themselves that are transporting. That's not
Inspecting the truck for what condition?
The truck indeed is not spilling all over the road getting to their facility for recycling.
Okay. We would regulate it at the facility, not over the road.
Got it.
I'm not familiar with them, but I do believe that there are over-the-road regulations, maybe
Okay.
with the Department of Safety, relative to covering loads
Okay.
and wet loads.
Michael, in your presentation, you mentioned something about the locality, and you also mentioned something about benefiting New Hampshire. I can say, living in South Weare, that this 3 per hour, that is not an accurate, because I actually live on the road. My living room is practically in the middle of 77. That is not an accurate display, and also those trucks, because I'm on the road for business a lot in Metro Boston, more than 2 times a week I'm following the trucks from 93 South, which is not New Hampshire, filled trucks all the way down to the facility currently. So I would like to know what percentage of recyclable materials are actually coming from New Hampshire to benefit New Hampshire. Is that number known? The percentage of the recycled materials that are coming currently, and how much will be coming from New Hampshire to be recycled to New Hampshire. Does that make sense? Like, I'm trying to figure
does.
out what, yeah.
And actually, so if I said only 3 trucks, it was an additional 3 trucks from what was going there now. So I made.
No, you said
that.
right now there were only 3 trucks. You said it would take a really long time to get to 6 trucks per hour. If there are currently 3 trucks running per hour, and I can tell you there is more.
No, I made a mistake. What I meant to say was when the facility is at its peak, it would be 3 trucks an hour more than what's there
Then
now,
what?
on average.
What is now?
So is there 3?
It says on your sign 3 is the maximum per hour right now.
That's sufficient. We're not even open yet.
Okay. So it said on the sign here, on this first one here, it says how many trucks are currently running, and with the expansion, it would only be 3 more per hour, or total of 3 per hour. I mean, I can look at it again, but
I believe that's
so
correct.
it up to how many trucks per hour would this be if you were running full capacity?
If you're only, the facility's only taking 300 tons a day, you have to.
He needs a mic. Can you take it?
Excuse me. My name's Martin O'Brien, owner of Grand State Recycling. On an average of 300 tons maximum, now we're talking maximum capacity, which is going to take a numerous amount of years to get there. Each truck, if it's a 10-wheeler, rear load or front-end compactor, is going to...
These are full-size tractor trailers.
I'm not talking tractor trailers.
I am.
I'm talking
Okay.
tractor trailers going out, you might be looking at about 6 a day at maximum capacity.
So maybe I just don't know my trucks very well, but the trucks that are coming, are you currently running recyclables there?
Currently, I'm owner of H2O Waste Disposal and Martico Dumpsters. Right now, majority of my stuff gets shipped out of town. I do come back and we sort out recycling, mixed fiber, cardboard, single stream recycling.
So the trucks that are coming in currently, the Schneitzer specifically, is that coming to you?
No.
The metal, the scrap metal? Or?
No, we have no tractor trailers going up and down that road. We have 6-wheelers only.
Nothing coming from 77 from Country Three Corners down to Gould Road?
No.
Nothing at all?
As far as my box trucks and those, yes, but not tractor trailers, no.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't do scrap metal.
Okay, so can you answer the New Hampshire question, please? The
Which was?
question about where you're accepting materials from and how that benefits New Hampshire. Are you only accepting as far as a free market?
It's basically going to be really right around our local communities. I service 29 communities with H2O Waste Disposal. And
Are they all New Hampshire?
Yes, they are. Yep. Right here in New Hampshire. And right now I am pushing that. Some of that material goes down into Massachusetts. It goes over to Bow. It goes to different vendors. So what I'm looking to do is to bring that material back and recapture the revenue, the recycling part of it, bale the stuff up, and then ship it out.
And in your integrity program, you don't have requirements as to the trucks that are transporting the materials?
I can't monitor the trucks coming in. That's DOT. That's their job.
And has DOT reviewed the plan for as far as the degradation of the roads?
Again,
for the amount of trucking that you want to do?
Only thing I can monitor is the loads coming in.
But not the usage? They don't monitor the usage?
I can monitor my own trucks going up and down the road if there's leakage. Then that's my job as owner to make sure those trucks meet DOT regulations.
And how many trucks do you have for your facility?
Right now I have currently 7 trucks.
Okay, I've taken enough time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could just add, there was a question about the liquid coming from the back of vehicles, and I mean nobody likes to see that, and we all know it does happen once in a while. In my experience, and I'm Marty, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but if a facility owner sees that, they try to figure out, is it an accident, is it a one-time event, or is this the same person that happens all the time? And if it is, they're told you can't come back here anymore. The good facilities do that anyway. You can't come back here. You have to fix your practices. We try to find out why that's happening because nobody wants that. It's more of a risk, so nobody would want that.
Jack Dearborn, I live at 148 Gould Road at the intersection of B&B Lane and Gould Road, and I see about everything going in and out. I have met Marty the other day, I think it was Tuesday last week. I came over after I saw this advertisement after about 4 people sent it to me, and he did take the time. How's that?
Better.
Very good. So anyways, I met Marty. He took me around and gave me a tour of his place. I thank him for that. But my question really is why everybody is here tonight. They are not here because you had this mom and pop operation which came for a site plan approval. Okay, that isn't the issue because nothing in the site plan minutes has anything to do with 300 tons, okay? It has everything to do with 9 employees maximum on the site, 10 parking spaces, and oh, by the way, the plan does not approve single stream recycling. So what you have for an application and what you've been approved for is apples and oranges. The real question is, how do we get from being a mom and pop, dump to dump, and I understand what you do down in Milford. How do we get to a 300 ton per day Effectively, that is, Town of Weare does 40 tons a week for 9,000 people. Extrapolate that, it's 300 tons times 6, 1,800. That is 45 times the tons of the Town of Weare. Just for perspective, what's the population would that be relevant to? 415,000 people. I was down in February down at Daytona 500. 100,000 people in the stands. 4 times that, more than 4 times.
Sir, I need to just, this may be very relevant for your public comments.
I want to know how we got from the mom and pop operation to the mega size facility for a population of 415,000 people. That's my only question, and I didn't hear it in the opening statement, and that is why people are here tonight.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to, relative to, for DES, we're responding to the application as proposed. So relative to changes on what he did in the past or what other facilities, we're looking at the application as proposed, 300 tons per day. So we're not looking at a change. I understand that there were previous local approvals. I think expanding on the prior question relative to local approvals, if there was a conflict, again, any decision by us wouldn't preclude the applicant from obtaining all other local, state, federal approvals. And also DES, we would not necessarily wait for those other approvals to be cured or obtained before we finish our review. We're actually obligated to perform our review within a certain time frame.
I just want to make sure I understand that. So we could ask for 3,000 tons per day under the existing permit he has for the Town of Weare, the approval. And you will still go through the permitting process? That's the goofy part of this. If he went 10 times, instead of 300 tons per day, average annualized, he could ask for 3,000 and you would still go through the same permitting process, even though it's goofy for the size of their facility they have?
Well, one of the reasons for requiring the applicant to define their desired capacity is that one of the things that we keep in mind when we are reviewing the application relative to design criteria and operating criteria to make sure that for that facility that they can actually handle that waste, that they have the room to accommodate the storage capacity that they have requested, I think 1,600 cubic yards. So it is included in our review, and our review would be different if they were applying for 3,000 tons a day versus 300 or 30.
Okay. You didn't ask the question. I understand the answer.
I guess I didn't understand the question.
Well, the question is, you will still go forwards and grant him a permit for 300 tons a day, and there's no probability of completing that in that facility. Okay? It's just goofy, because if that's the case, if that facility can support 415,000 people, there'll be a lot of facilities being shut down. Okay? I'm just saying.
Okay.
I think it's just goofy.
What I'd like to do is, I understand, I'd like to maybe have you repeat that, or we've heard it, but what I'm hearing is a public comment that you do not believe that that facility can handle the 300 tons per day that they have applied for. Is that a summation?
Not with 9 people.
Okay.
Not
I'm sorry, if you're gonna speak, please step up to the microphone, because we're also recording it and we'll lose it.
I understand. My apologies. He can only go within 1.337 acres on that site. That perimeter around the building is the impervious area that can be trod on, run over, whatever you want. The rest of the acreage cannot have anything put on it. You've got all kinds of equipment put on the pervious part of the aquifer. So there's something really goofy here about the implementation. Okay.
Thank you. Any other clarifying questions?
I would like some clarification because I just heard that one of the benefits to us is that we'd be bringing in more recyclables. I happen to know that I've talked to Pennacook, I've talked to the NRRA, and I've talked to our own transfer station highway department person, Benji Knapp. Right now, cardboard is a viable substance to get rid of. Plastic is virtually impossible to get rid of. So there is a problem with getting rid of recyclables. I don't see a benefit to that. Secondly, the statement of we can't clarify how many trucks are actually coming in. That has come out very clearly. And we haven't had a study done to the road, but I can tell you this, that the traffic on that road and the number of trucks coming in, they're going to be backed up because when Pennacook has trucks coming in, unless you have everybody told that they can't come in for every 20 minutes and you stagger them, you're going to have a line of trucks on that road and you've got families and kids. So there's going to be a traffic problem. How are you going to address it?
Now, we're again moving into public testimony, and what I heard is there's a traffic issue for queuing on roads. I'm going to at least start the answer because that is something that DES would consider. Now, I've mentioned that we don't regulate the over-the-road hauling relative to leaks from trucks, but we would put requirements on the facility to prevent them from queuing trucks in the road waiting to get into the facility.
You mentioned something about the majority of the facility, the packaging or the bundling or however you put it, inside, as far as not being, you mentioned debris, I think that's what it was, floating through the air. How do you mitigate or deal with debris such as dust? A lot of asbestos, like what is the requirement on the facility to mitigate if you have construction debris on the inside? You're certainly not going to be poisoning your people on the inside. It's going to be fans blowing out. How is that dealt with?
And I'll start that. In the operating plan, I'm not sure if they specifically address dust. I think they do. But that is, that would be one of the criteria in our rules, that they're required to control to the greatest extent practicable. It's a subjective standard. It is pretty broad. It's up to interpretation by us. Are they doing enough, doing everything to the greatest extent practicable to control dust?
How much of the recyclables will have construction debris? I know you said it wasn't a lot, but what is not a lot?
I would have to ask the applicant on that.
So, are we still answering questions, or are you doing public comment now?
I think that's, yeah, that's a good question.
I don't know the specific answer to that. I don't know if it's really hard to say even on average because it would.
Percentage? 50-50, 40-60? What is the percentage of construction debris?
Well, if you get a load of wood, then.
No, I'm talking more specifically about the poisonous stuff. Not really.
Yeah, we at our facility we will not be taking any hazardous materials, asbestos, lead paints. We don't take any of that. And if it comes in, like DS said, it'll either get loaded back up, on that truck and get shipped back out. We're only handling single stream recycling, the cardboards, the plastics, tin and aluminum, light irons that come in the demo loads, and reprocess the wood. And then this is something that we all produce. This is something that we all make. I'm just the guy looking to handle it, and I'm looking to do it the right way, the proper way, and to recycle it the best that I can. It's not going to contaminate. It's not going to be a dump or a landfill. It's something I'm proud of to do, and I'm very passionate about. And I think at one point when we get up and running, I'm sure the town of Weare will be very proud of it as well.
And what about transportation on the route? How are you going to take your trucks from Concord 77? Because right now, currently, the trucks that could be running 114 are riding Jake brakes all the way from Country 3 down to Bull Road.
My trucks personally don't have Jake brakes.
Are they going to be running 114 or 77?
It'd probably be both, to be honest with you, depending on the location where they're coming. Because we service as high. We go to Concord. We're up in Bradford, Hopkinton, Warner. We go as far as south as Brookline, Hollis, Milford, Amherst, that whole area. Now I'm talking strictly my trucks. And
And all
even
these trucks are going to be going down to Gould Road. And
those trucks right now are currently going down Gould Road.
Yes, they are.
Those
And that's
7 or 8
why
trucks.
I have a question. Who is going to weigh the 300 tons? How does that take place?
The material gets weighed on a scale. And again, the 300 tons is a maximum capacity. I mean, will that facility see that? Probably not. It's just part of the permit process that we
And I have another question. If they decrease the amount of tonnage, say to 100 ton, would there be a difference in the trucking?
Oh, yeah.
That's the main thing. That's the main thing. Myself, at this point, the trucking on Gould Road and 114 and 77 coming in, I live on the corner, they come around that corner, and there's everything going up there now. And if they decreased it, I don't know whether that would, I don't know how many people here are even in favor of this. I know I'm not. That's my personal opinion, because I've lived there for so long, and I've seen all these changes and how it has happened. It hurts. It hurts to see this.
Sorry, just
If you have a clarifying
Yes,
question,
a clarifying
but
question
we're cutting
for these
into
guys.
time for public comment. We've got a lot of public comments to be made.
Just if you could clarify, I know you guys filed for no exposure with stormwater. Could you speak to that? It sounds like there's potential for spillage on the facilities. Looking at the images that you guys have for the dumps trucks there, or the bins, you have tarps over it. So could you just speak to that and the rationale for not having it?
Yeah, so the way EPA looks at stormwater quality and threats to stormwater quality is can stormwater be impacted at a facility? And stormwater is defined as something that could flow off in EPA's mind and get into another water body. So this site, A, isn't connected directly to a water body where something could flow off the site and get into a flowing river or something because of the nature of the site. It would infiltrate. The site is covered with sand and gravel. But the activities that happen that would expose potential pollutants happen inside on a slab. So EPA looks at a situation like that and says there's really no exposure. Whenever you're doing something under a roof, even if you're working with hazardous materials, industry does this quite often. They put a roof over their operating areas, and that allows them to be excluded.
Gotcha. And as far as the groundwater, I was reading through the report. It's high levels, 5 feet down. There's quite a bit of water underneath the facility, which goes over to our properties. So could you speak to that piece of it?
But I'm not sure what your question is.
As far as you're saying runoff directly into a stream close by, how about water table getting into that?
Yeah, the precipitation at the site will seep downward before it's really going to flow sideways. So it will seep downward through the pervious materials around the building, and then until it reaches the water table. And then once it's in the water table, it's going to flow. The stormwater, the precipitation flows wherever groundwater goes.
So to the aquifer in that area.
Right?
Okay.
Hi, Jerry Hange, your neighbor. I assume the 300 tons is including storage? Is that? It's complete storage, right? I mean, I think I might be clarifying it maybe for some people. The other thing, if there is an excessive litter issue, I hope I just come see you. That'd be fine. All right. And my only questions have ever been litter and rats. That's the only thing I care about. So. That's it.
Chris Haig, I'm just wondering what particular reason you chose this locale. Is there an advantage to Weare that you liked?
From an engineering perspective, without Mr. O'Brien even saying anything, I would prefer a location like this because it has safe routes for trucks to come in and out around the building. There's a lot of space there. The inside of the building is huge and offers a really great environment in order to manage the waste in the way that GSR is planning to manage it. So the building and the surrounding part of the building in an industrial zone is kind of an ideal place for that type of an operation. I can't speak to the area that GSR is serving, but if the area that it's intending to serve is close enough to this type of facility, that those two things meet up, and there's the answer. But I don't know if, Marty, you'd want to add anything to that.
To be honest with you, one of my trucks was coming through Weare, because we service Weare, and the truck broke down. So I called Kent's Towing out of Milford, and he said TMS diesel. So we had our truck towed down to TMS diesel. And East Coast Container, who apparently occupied the building at the time, had done some previous work for me on containers. So I had stopped in there and talked to him, and he had told me that he was selling the facility. So from my standpoint, grace of God, I just stumbled across it, and I just liked the area, and I loved the town. So here I am.
Okay, it's just shortly after 9 o'clock. I'm going to call the first name, so we'll move to the portion of the hearing where this is your opportunity, if you filled out a yellow card, to give comments. And I'm calling folks in the order that we received the yellow card. So I'm calling first Jack Dearborn, please, if you'd kindly step to the microphone. Repeat your name so we make sure we have the right person, and your address, and that'd be great.
Jack Dearborn, 148 Gould Road, tax map 411, lot 99. Okay, I want to get back, and I'd like to get an answer. The town of Weare approved a small mom and pop operation. You look through all the minutes. It says nothing about 300 tons, 100 tons, any tons. And the way it was sold is 9 people, and it does not include single-stream recyclable. So you have it all over your, I've read the whole 181 pages multiple times. And there's issue with proposed, the idea on looking at the notes. That's where all those requirements are placed. And basically it says recycling products of C&D, which is construction and demolition, MSW, municipal solid waste. That's it. No SSR. So whoever did this design didn't look at the requirements that are allowed. Now, if this whole thing was a ruse to come in here and get a small operation through the town and then come in and do a whole operation on this side, well, you succeeded. We certainly were not sophisticated enough to know what was going on to ask the questions. That's point number one. Point number two, in your own pages in your own plan, you basically say there's 25 to 30 trucks a day. In another place, you have it at paragraph 3.2, you have 30 trucks per day. So we hear 60. And we're not talking about the little trucks painted up with dump to dump on it. That's a small 2-ton truck. I don't know if you could actually get trash to weigh 2 tons in that. It's very bulky. He's talking about these big packet trucks that come in out of Manchester. So again, we're going to be servicing potentially 415,000 people's worth of capacity, the size of Hillsborough County. And as soon as he gets that permit, I'll guarantee you, he can subcontract anything he doesn't use out to Waste Management or Panad if they haven't already done that. So it isn't a small operation we're doing here that we were sold on. It's something incredibly large, and nobody is offering tax rebates to get people like these folks in here. Okay? They don't want them, and they're getting thrown out of other places. We were not sophisticated enough to understand this as a town, unfortunately. So I'll be up again, I'm sure, but I mean, that's the essence of the reason why people are here, not because he wants to run a mom and pop operation. We're here because of 300 tons. That's all I heard Tuesday. And I went over and saw him so I could actually understand if he made a mistake. And the answer was no. So it's very planned out, very precise, hired these folks to do all the work, and I'm sure any residual capacity he's got over his own internal use is going to be sold out. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's coming from New Hampshire. It just means you can't dump into the incinerator what comes not in New Hampshire. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Dearborn. Are they complete? You're just at 3 minutes.
I'm not. I just wanted to give everybody else a chance.
Okay, so you want me to recycle you back in?
Please.
Okay. I'm calling Bruce Fillmore, please.
Bruce Fillmore, 181 Gould Road. I happen to be on the planning board. I'm not here as a planning board member. I'm here as a butter resident. I'd like to know how, if it's going to take years to get to 300 tons, why are you applying for a 300 ton a day permit now? I mean, you could, as a planning board member, I went down and saw your Milford facility. It was nowhere near this scale. And as Mr. Dearborn pointed out, this scale violates the approved plan from the planning board in multiple directions. So you're going to have to come back before the planning board to be able to utilize that plan. And I'm not sure how it's going to go. So the 300 ton a day permit is just dramatically different than what was represented to anybody ever. So that's it.
Thank you. I'm next calling Tim Matheson, please.
Can I recycle my time? Okay. And I'll recycle.
Sure.
You'd like to be put into the queue for
Want me
an
to wait?
opportunity later? Is that what you mean?
Want me to wait?
I
I'm
just
happy
want
to
to make
wait.
sure I understand that you still want to speak, but maybe later.
Okay. Got it.
I just want to point out, regarding that plan over there, the 1.337 acres, which is considered impervious, impermeable, however you want to think, water doesn't go through it. It includes the roof, any asphalt, any cement walkways, plus the 30-plus years that trucks drove around in the circle around that building. So that is delineated on that map specifically for that purpose. The rest of the balance of the 3.54 acres is pervious, meaning you could put nothing on it. Okay? Stay off on it, don't run on it. Currently, you show that you have your hot load containment dumpster on it, and the other 10 in sort of a row going down on it. That doesn't fit. I mean, that's just a basic fact. So, went through this whole, I mean, I'm sure you probably spent $50,000, $75,000 to get these guys to do this. There is a requirement here that's a starting point. This is significantly different. I think that's why people are here tonight. So let me just go through a few things. The issue with your loading dock, that's not on there. Okay? It's a change to the site plan. You have a loading dock and 3 containers, one which isn't permitted. The SSR, again, not compliant. You moved your scales from being, if you could look over here, you'll see them down on the bottom side of the building. I know it's hard to see.
I'm just going to clarify for the record that you're
I'm pointing
from the applicant's plan to...
I'm pointing to the original site plan, which is called Change of Use Site Plan.
Thank you.
Okay? That's the one over there. And over here, they have moved the loading, the scale, and you define in your own words, WB-50. That is a specification of a semi-trailer. There is no way that semi-trailer can make onto that without going onto the pervious soils. Cannot make the turn. It's 45, radius of 45 feet for the tractor, outer wheel. If you're turning left, it'd be the right wheel. the following trailer left wheel will always cut in. You're never going to make it the way you got it. And you also have a future office. My God, the place is already crammed full of stuff now. And you want to have another office building, which isn't on that plan. So this is a plan for way in the future. This is a plan for the present. I mean, that's just as simple as it gets. I mean, I can go through countless pages of issues. I mean, I'm going to put this in my written report. But even here, this is Section 2 within Section 2, facility description. Again, you cite what's not on that plan. You have asked for single-stream recyclables, SSR. It's not on that plan. It's not on Note 17. The other two are. They are municipal solid waste and construction and demolition, C&D. That's fine. Then you get down here to 300 tons, and it's called cubic tons average annually. Hypothetically, in one day in a year, you can bring everything in for the year, and the rest of the year, you do nothing. I mean, that's an extreme case. But this is an average over a year. So, again, what we were sold in town and what we have over here are A and B, two different things. And they are the legal term is inconsistent. Or if you want to talk from an engineering perspective, it's non-compliant. Inconsistent and non-compliant. So I don't know why they made this huge investment for something that they have over here. I mean, that's the principal issue. Everything else is fluff, as far as I'm concerned.
Understood. You're at 4.5 minutes almost.
Coming back.
Other people have to have a chance to talk. So the next person is Thomas Clow, and I'm sorry if I have injured your name.
Somebody get ahead of the old guys. I'm sorry.
It's Clow, but you are not alone in butchering it.
I was pretty close.
Pretty close, yeah.
Thank you.
I was on the planning board when we went through the process of creating this site plan, and we actually thought we were doing a pretty thorough job. We did site walks at this site. We insisted on the site plan that, for example, an initial test of an existing well be done and that annual water tests from that well be done in the future. A number of things that were talked about here, but not to just repeat what's already been said, but there really is such a difference. We had no concept of the size of the operation that we were discussing when it was presented to us. And even though we were very diligent, brought a candidate back before us, the applicant back before us a number of times, but it just doesn't match up, as the previous speaker said, with what we thought we were approving on the site plan. There are two specific notes on the site plan that I think we should focus on. Revised Note 17, recycling of products, C&D, construction materials, and MSW, municipal waste, all to be processed inside the existing building, which is what we're talking about here. All materials are to be containerized, baled, shipped weekly to market. No material shall be stored outside. Outside storage of company vehicle and employee vehicles only. Only clean, empty dumpsters are to be stored outside in a watertight covering or under a waterproof roof. And these are notes on the site plan as was approved by the planning board. And then note 18, any fluids that are byproducts of the MSW shall be contained and properly disposed of off-site in a timely manner, and no materials shall be stored outside. So that is a big point, because there are all kinds of storage material, storage containers shown here, and we go back to the magnitude of 300 tons a day. It's inconceivable to me that that amount of material can be processed without having some of it stored outside. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is W.C. Beaupre, please.
My name is Bill Beaupre. I'm at 234 Gould Road. I have one comment, then I'd like to yield the balance of my time to Jack Dearborn, please.
Okay.
I just want to point out to everybody here that this project, as envisioned, has absolutely no economic benefit to this community. The building is an existing building that pays taxes now, so that isn't going to increase taxes. They're going to just deteriorate a road faster that we're going to end up paying for, that they will pay not one nickel towards. And I think you all understand that before Jack finishes my 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to go on record and say that I believe the industrial park across the street has been a very good neighbor of mine. I know Jerry Haynes very well, and over the last few years, I've been in my site since '77. I've been on my site since '77.
Can I stop you for a moment? I'm having a little trouble with the recorder. It seems to be playing what we just went through, and I want to make sure we're capturing people's comments. So let me just stop it for a second and make sure we're... Thank you for your patience. I just want to make sure we capture things. Sorry to interrupt you. Please resume. Can you tell us your name again, just so we're clear on this record?
Jack Dearborn, 148 Gould Road, tax map 411, lot 99. I just want to say that I consider B&B Lane, everybody down there, I've known them for most of my life. And I dealt with Mike Brown, Jerry, got on a list on the both sides. So we managed to get along very well. And I don't anticipate any different with Marty. The big question here is the inertia like we've been talking about. And like things like everything's supposed to be inside, that loading dock is not inside the building, nor are those other containers out there that'll be live loaded through the day. So there's a scale issue here going back to it, and I'll just let the next person come up.
Thank you, Mr. Dearborn. The next person is Chris Haig, please.
Chris Haig, I live on Abijah Bridge Road, and I think scale issue is pertinent to my remarks because what I hear is a major industrial use in a small residential town, and I think my comment goes to a different section of DES, which would be the air quality department. But what I'm looking at is from the Southern New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission's final regional transportation plan 2017 to 2040, which is a very systematic study of all of the arteries in and out of all of our towns within the Planning Commission's jurisdiction. And routes 114 and 77 are not major arteries. They are, according to this report, designed for residential transportation and not industrial transportation. Route 114 in Goffstown is considered an impacted artery, which means that the flow of traffic and the volume cannot be carried safely by the road. So one of the items that they address in their report, which I think is pertinent to the volume of diesel truck traffic, says the region's continuing dependence on roadways for freight transportation also suggests that there will be a growing need to address air quality concerns and greenhouse gas emissions associated with transporting goods. US DOT estimates that emissions from movement of freight make up almost 1/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions attributable to transportation, and these emissions have increased by 50% since 1990. Diesel truck engines are a major source of pollutants, and although EPA introduced restrictions on vehicle emissions for vehicles newer than 2006, many older trucks still in use lack pollution control technology, and it goes on. The point is, the volume we have right in 2010, Route 114 on the new Boston-Goffstown line was already 13,000 vehicles, trips average daily, annual average. By 2040, they look at 23,041. We can't handle that, and it's not going to benefit us in this town to have our air quality changed by diesel emissions, particularly when traffic is slowed down or backed up.
Thank you, Ms. Haig. Could I ask you to submit the link to us here at DES with your comments?
Yes, I can send you my citations.
Great. Thank you very much. Calling Pete Schrankel, please.
Hi, folks. Pete Schrankel. I'm at 193 Gould Road. I appreciate everything we've talked about in terms of water tonight, air pollution, noise pollution, all concerns. To address the 300-ton issue, I think it's a little bit like when you get a credit card. Bank issues you a credit card for $10,000, and you can tell them, I have no intention of getting to $10,000 on that credit card. The bank assumes pretty much right away that you're going to go out and fill that card up right away. So much like the big dig, I think we're going to get the capacity a lot faster than we're talking about. But aside from all that, we've talked about this site as an industrial site. And I think we're missing the point that it's really an industrial site that's in the middle of a significant residential area. I'm sorry. So we're talking about this as an industrial site, but it's really in the middle of what is a pretty significant residential area. So we're out walking with our pets, and our kids are on their bikes, and they're standing at bus stops at the end of driveways on Gould Road, which is already very busy, and speeding is issues, and those kinds of impacts. And so, we talk about the bigger issues and zoning issues and clarity and what was presented versus maybe what was intended. But at the end of the day, really for most of us here, I think this is just about that. This is, big impact in terms of, again, all those things, the noise, traffic volume, size of the trucks in a place where, there's a lot of homes and a lot of families and a lot of kids. So.
Thank you very much. Neil Kirk, please.
Neil Kirk, Mount Dearborn Road. I'm a member of the Planning Board, and I'm speaking on my personal interest. I was going to talk to you about all of the reasons why this application violates the permission that the Planning Board gave to these folks. But you really don't care about that, because Mr. Moore told us at the very beginning that the DES process is independent of the town process, and if there's a conflict, obviously the applicant has to follow the more restrictive of the two permits. Indeed, almost everything that's been said tonight is of no interest to DES because it doesn't relate to the things that you're concerned about. They certainly relate to the things that we as townspeople are concerned about, but not DES.
Mr. Kirk, with all due respect, we are carefully listening, and these concerns that have been brought up to us are important to us. That's why we have a public hearing like this. We understand there's an issue between what was presented to the Planning Board and what's presented to DES, and they're being inconsistent, and we have heard that as well, and so we will take that in consideration. Yes, our review process is independent, but it's not without knowledge that there are other government bodies that have to review this application as well.
I will, in my written comments, I will put in the 4 or 5 points that I wanted to make about inconsistency, but I believe that Mr. Moore made it very clear, at least to me, that he's only interested in those things that fall within DES's purview. So, this application fails to comply with DES Rule Environmental SW 404.04. That rule requires the application meet waste handling and storage area design requirements. The application fails to do that, insofar as it expresses storage rates in Section 2.7, page 3 of 20, in cubic yards, and collection in tons. The application fails to demonstrate that the storage capacity in cubic yards is sufficient to handle the proposed maximum weekly collection in tons, or indeed any level of daily collection. It should be noted that an assertion to the extent, It should be noted that an assertion to the extent that the application asserts, tacitly or otherwise, that the storage capacity of the processing building in cubic yards is sufficient to handle the maximum tonnage to be collected is not a demonstration. Indeed, the operating plan states that the building alone cannot support the requested collection tonnage, as outside storage in 3 semi-trailers and 10 30-cubic-yard dumpsters is required. Quote from the application: at full capacity, on-site storage for materials consists of 3 128-cubic-yard closed trailers and 10 32-cubic-yard closed dumpsters outside, and approximately 900 cubic feet of floor space inside the processing building for a total storage capacity of 1,600 cubic yards. That outside storage is expressly prohibited by the Weare Planning Board's approval. Granting a permit for a collection tonnage in excess of the processing building's capacity to process that quantity is inconsistent with the Weare Planning approval that was given to these folks. And it's inconsistent with your own requirements, as I cited earlier. The rest of it will come to you in the form of a very extensive letter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Richard Brown, please.
I'd like to give you my briefing notes so you could actually see what I was talking about.
You may submit those, yes.
Okay.
Can you state your name
tonight,
again, just
Jack
keeping the
Dearborn,
record?
148 Gould Road, Still.
That's
tax
fine.
Map,
Thank you,
411,
Mr. Dearborn.
Lot 99. Let me just read this. This is sort of the 2 paragraphs. And this talks about what I mentioned about the 300 tons per day. Example, 300 tons per day, parentheses, average annually, as specified. Waste processed at 33 B&B Lane. Town of Weare Transfer Station, 40 tons per week, utilizing 2 tractor-trailer containers of municipal waste per week. This is from the Town of Weare Public Works Director, Benjamin Knapp, for a population of approximately 9,000 people. 300 tons per day rate would be equivalent of 1,800 tons for a 6-day week. By comparison, it would be 45 times the waste generated by the Town of Weare 9,000 person population, or a population of 415,000 people, over 4 times the attendance at the Daytona 500 Speedway, that is 4 times 101,000 people, or a population of Hillsborough County, 409,000 people. The reference I hear, my link for all my information came from your website. It's here, so to be part of that. And this is sort of my closing, hopefully my closing statement. Okay. The inconsistencies are so great between the Town of Weare Planning Board approved change of use site plan, pointing to my left, dated April 13th, 2017, and the proposed Geo Insight project 8537-000, dated December 21, 2017, and it is the proposed site layout plan right there. They are more than just interpretations, they are significant changes. As a result, I recommend that the DES, the Hampshire DES, please outright reject Geo Insight's project 8537-000, dated December 21st, 2017, due to gross inconsistencies that are in conflict with the change of use site plan, to my left, as approved by the Town of Weare Planning Board on April 13th, 2017. This will require Geo Insight to revise project 8537-000, consistent with a change of land use plan, that one, or resubmit to the Weare Planning Board a new change of use site plan application for the Planning Board's consideration and approval. Jack Dearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Dearborn. Thank you. David Gettain? Are you still?
Yeah, that's
Gettain. Mr. Dearborn or Mr. Kirk, do you want to come up again for Mr. Gettain?
Let me just, I was just asked to do something. I don't know how to do this with that not pointing towards you, but I just want to, I don't know how to do this.
I'm going to give you this microphone as you're walking so we can capture what you're saying.
Because, can you hit? Okay, good. See, what I'm talking about, the impervious, specifically delineated, is this dash line. And it's like my 4-year-old granddaughter. You tell her, you got to stay within the line when you're coloring. This is the 1.7 acre. Right up here, lot coverage calculations. Technically speaking, if this was a brand new site with nothing on it, and it was built under zoning, which it would be if it was today, you can only use 10% of that surface to be impervious without significant investment of having capture pools and retention pools and putting it back into the aquifer. So the point I'm making is this is extremely delineated, and this can actually be re-identified on the ground should it be necessary, because this is all captured by Mike Dahlberg of, is it Keith and Huckstrom or whatever it is? The company here. Yes. So this one over here is also delineated. And the building's the same, and all the relief is all the same. Nothing's really different. Well, this doesn't have the relief. But here,
Sorry, I just want to keep the record clear. You've been pointing to the site plan submitted to the town. Now you've moved over to what was submitted to DES for plan.
P2, Plan 2, Section, I think it's 8. Same delineation. I just want to point out, because this is the crux of the whole conversation. Hot dumpster, outside. These 10 closed dumpster storage are all outside. They're on the pervious location that cannot be trod upon, compressed. This is where the aquifer gets recharged. This is all they've been given credit for the site. This is not on the other one, meaning the proposed portable loading docks. And 2 of the 3 that they proposed is used over on question 17, note 17. The SSR, single stream recyclable, is not even allowed over there. This is supposed to be over here. Future office is not even supposed to be in there. So, I mean, I don't know how to say any other way. Oops. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stephanie, thank you.
Stephanie Zeidenboss, I live in South Weare. Does the environmental, the DES, take into consideration, because I know that all of the things that have been discussed, some of the town, but in grave concern of I was trying to do a count, I think I had my kids count, 76 residential homes, that doesn't include 77 south of Gould Road. Families, many of the families that have been there for 30, 40 years, some that are new, it doesn't really matter how long you've been there. This project would affect over 100 families in our homes. These are residential, even though that's commercially zoned on that one strip of Gould Road. These are families. My kids we don't have a dog anymore. We can't have animals, and it's not because the house has moved. It's because of the flow of traffic. It's the flow of anything that is already in existence that's already too much. And back to your report, I think that that's going to be very pinnacle in looking at what we currently have now as 77 and Route 114 as not major routes for anything other than residential traffic. That's the big issue, the quality of life, the real estate values, and basically environmental impacts that far precede really big stuff that could happen there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sherry Burdick.
Sherry Burdick, 382 Deering Center Road. I just have two Weare master plan issues. One is Article 25 that states that the purpose of industrial district in the town of Weare is for light service, industrial, and light manufacturing firms, and I don't think 300 ton a day is light. There's one. And the other one is Article 29 Aquifer Protection Ordinance. And there's a full copy of it here, and I'm happy to give it to you.
Thank you. We will accept that. So the next speaker will be Jen Snyder. You're going to defer? He's all set, he says. Do you want to say something more?
I think there might have been some complications within our planning board. I spoke to New Boston today, someone at the town hall there, and to me, they should have received a regional impact notification, groundwater contamination, traffic, etc. And they said they have not received anything like that. Because the towns, this water flow goes into two towns directly. It goes into New Boston first, secondary into Goffstown, and beyond. And I was just wondering too, that was one item, 1,600 cubic yards, is that above the 300 tons that would be on site per day?
I think Mr. Kirk was alluding to this as relative to the tons per day is a throughput in, say, mass or weight. Yards is volume, like how much can you fit in a room. There is a relationship depending on how heavy or dense the material is.
So the relationship was between all the containers, it would be 1,600 cubic yards, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what happens to the commodity items, the plastic, the cans, in a downturn market? How are we going to know? Like the paper, I think, is a down market. Is that a correct assumption, Martin?
Yes, it is. The recycling market, it's almost like the stock market. It, you know, it varies.
We need a microphone. Hold on, please. Mr. O'Brien.
Yes, to your question, the recycling market, it's almost like the stock market. It has its ups and downs. But recycling is still important to the environment. Right now, single stream recycling, if you get rid of single recycling, it's going to cost you $45, $47 a ton to get rid of. To get rid of it as MSW or C&D or, you know, another commodity, you're up to the 100 a ton to get rid of it.
And what is your explanation of MSW, municipal solid waste?
That's trash.
What does that comprise of?
It's trash that we pick up.
That's
residential.
absolutely trash. It's
right. Yep.
Everything.
Yeah.
Okay. And we had a situation in Weare where we had to haul our trailer back with radioactive material. It was found out there was a cat in the neighborhood that had radioactive medication, and they threw the kitty litter in the container. Now, do you have equipment on site to handle such or detect?
Well, it's going to get
like
detected as it comes across the scales. They have the detector that will pick it up, and then that, for instance, like you just said, it will get shipped back to that destination that it came from.
Okay. The other thing I had to ask is, why is there no paving? Why would you take the risk to, I tell you what, where that building sits now, there was probably a 30 or 40 foot tall escrow of gravel there. We used to camp on the point out at Daniels Lake. And that was to the right of the phone poles. So in doing such, that's why I say the water table is extremely close, and I think someone mentioned that it's within 5 feet of the surface. I would have to ask why it wouldn't be paved and there's no detention pond, or what is your best case? If something comes in on a, let me just say this, if something came in like in a 55-gallon drum and it spilt out as they dropped it, how would you contain it?
Well, it would be, if it got dumped out, it would be inside the building. We would contain it with socks, speedy dry materials that would, almost like you do, you just throw your socks out and contain the area.
Okay. The other thing too is the rodents. Now the rodents climb into the dumpsters when they're on a site, if someone's doing a renovation of some sort. Now they get carted to Weare, and you had talked about disposing of the rodents. Now, are you using bait kills or traps, or the problem with the bait kill is there's primary kill, secondary kill, and however far the poison goes out to the neighborhoods.
Now, are you talking rodents as far as?
Mice, rats that are accustomed to being in an area like this.
Well, I've been in the waste industry for 34 years, back with waste management. And with my experience, if you're in a landfill or a dump, you're going to see rats, rodents. It's a given. In a transfer station facility, the material is constant moving, so you don't have time for those rodents to take habitat. Occasionally, you might get a rodent that might come into a load that might have been into a dumpster that got dumped into the truck. If that happens, we'll contain it and call a pest control company to come in, JP Pest Control.
Because it just makes me think of this place on Exit 5 in Londonderry.
Yep.
There's a collection facility down there.
Yep, town of Derry.
It's been shut down for probably 15 years. There are 60-foot tall nets on telephone poles to keep the garbage within the site. And that place, after they closed, that was just teeming with rodents, and it's just nasty. I don't know what to do on that site now, but nobody seems to want to do anything with it.
Yeah, I couldn't answer on that. I know the city of Manchester, when I used to dump in there years ago when it was a landfill, they closed all that and they got the vent pipes, and that seems to be fine. But I can't answer on that type of question as far as that landfill or that site.
So actually the paving, what is the reason why it's not paved? Maybe that's to Mike Penny, if you can answer that.
They're planned.
Because
the planned use.
You had told us just barely a little while ago that you were talking about the precipitation goes straight into the ground and then into the aquifer, driving everything to its subsurface, down into the water table. I guess why wouldn't it be paved and have a detention pond of some sort?
The activities where the potential pollutants are exposed all happen inside the building on a paved surface, which is the concrete. So that's why there's no need to pave the outside. There's not enough of a risk outside of the building. And we've heard description tonight about that area being impervious anyway, which I don't really think it's impervious to the degree pavement would be.
Well, it's all straight gravel. It's actually, there's a well on site that's been contaminated. It just shows you how easily the water flow through there is. What's that?
Excuse me, you had just mentioned there was a contaminant?
I heard there was a contaminant in the well, the dug well that's out back now. I'm not sure of that, but...
All right, so you're saying the contaminant. There's contaminants already there?
Yeah.
On that facility or in that industrial park?
Yes.
Right. I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were saying.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just clarify? Were you saying that in regards to if there's already contamination in the well and there hasn't been any pavement, what is the mitigation, or how would you, I think he brought up that the well was already contaminated, not that you were contaminating it, but how would you keep something like that? Sorry, can you?
I can, sorry, Mr. Barbine. I can answer that question. There's actually a file on that site with DES. The contamination was reported by I think the previous owner-operator of Mr. O'Brien's property, issues with their well. DES came out. I think the source was determined to be the neighboring property with bark mulch. And I think the solution at that time was to do some stormwater management on the bark mulch site and close the dug well. So, but the actual DES documents are available on our website, and if you check in with me after the hearing, or we'll make sure we get that information out.
Thanks. Mr. Frank Campana.
Frank Campana, 322 Quaker Street. My comment is directed mostly to the Environmental Service. You actually stole some of my thunder with your last statement, and I want it to be perfectly understood. This project slated is in the southern end of the town, and I live on the far north end of the town, so I'm not directly impacted. There are a lot of issues with it: truck traffic, contamination, tonnage, and all, et cetera, et cetera. But my purpose to you is, what seems to me is, from what I've heard tonight, is kind of the lack of interest on the part of DES to protect the groundwater. Again, I just heard it touched upon right now, but that was after the fact. And I was going to mention that. I've been around long enough. I heard that, wood chip processing place that you just mentioned that they had to tar extra area and put retention ponds because of the tannin that could be in the wood. But my concern is to you folks, and it's on your logo there. It shows air, trees, mountains. I don't know what the rectangular blocks are. No, I don't know what the rectangular blocks are, but it shows water. And I'm not comforted at all that DES is concerned very much with the water. Early on, you classified, when it was mentioned about the aquifer, you classified it as something. You gave it a classification, which didn't seem very high on the priority list until a lady here brought up the fact that it seems to be, or should be, high on the priority list. So, a public hearing is great, but my concern is that you're maybe just holding a public hearing to satisfy a requirement, which many times, even at the local level, that's all the public hearing is for, to satisfy a requirement. But I'd like to have a little bit of confidence in you folks who are in charge of protecting the environment. And that includes the water in this particular case. Thank you.
I just want to clarify, I hope I didn't give the impression that the solid waste permitting does not care about water. Actually, the purpose of our rules is to protect human health and the environment. Water is definitely a part of that. Even water that doesn't meet a certain classification, all water, groundwater, surface water, the soil, the air, that's what our regulations are directing us to do. They're all in place to prevent impacts to those. So, yes, we do care.
We'll hear from Lori Davis, please.
Excuse me, James Schneider in a recycle pile.
The town of Weare is filled with kind, thoughtful, considerate people, and they tend to be very trusting. I'm not trusting. You came to our planning board with one plan, and you claimed that you came because your truck broke down. You like the site and you like the town. The actual answer to that is you got a very good price for that property, and the town is extremely naive. They trusted you. The fact of the matter is, you came in with one plan. You're coming in with a totally different plan, not expecting us to figure this out, not expecting resistance. But really what concerns me is it's about business for you. You're going to be buying business to come in here to deliver recyclables to you. The recyclable market is in big trouble. As you said, it's like the stock market. You can't get rid of a lot of the recyclables right now. So those recyclables aren't going to be held for a week. They're going to be held for several months. It's happening at Pennacook, it's happening at NRRA, it's happening in Meredith. Every town that has this has the exact same problem. Part of the reason you're coming here is because towns are closing down their areas. They don't want this stuff in it. It's going to drive the property values for those people who live on Gould Road down, which is bad for our town. The other problem that comes into this whole effect is I have heard things about water. I have heard about what we're concerned about on site. What I'm not hearing about is the damage you're doing to our town, our roads, our taxpayers whose prices are going to go down on their homes. You are not taking into consider that, and while I understand where DES is coming from, I also am well aware that DES is taking all this input because this does come into them. They don't want to take the heat for if this goes down. Now, while they're concerned about what happens on site, anything that happens in this town with things that are dripping in, because you can't stop what comes in. You're coming in with C&D. You're coming in with garbage. It can come in with toxic stuff. It'll drive on our roads. Our animals will lick that water. They will be dead. Our children will be playing on it. The only recourse we have are our favorite words, lawsuits. Everything about your business is to hurt our town and to fill your pocketbook. There is nothing positive coming out of this for our town. And for you to sit there and say to us that this is going to be a good thing, I've checked the recyclable markets. I know very well how they work. And I am very much aware where everything is right now. Milford is up to capacity, so things have to start coming out of Milford. You need more space, and that's what you're doing here. But at the end of the day, you violated what we trusted you to do. You are overstepping your bounds, and that is a big problem. You are not going to be a good neighbor, and you are not going to be helping our town. This permit should be shut down.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Jim Leary, please.
Jim Leary, 189 Gould Road, and I'm not coming up to say that I moved near an airport and now I'm complaining about the noise. That's my wife and I moved into town a little bit ago, 20 years, and when we did, we sat on the side of Gould Road and waited and watched vehicles go down and back because we were told that it's a busy road. And we decided that it wasn't that busy, that we'd build our house there. But I'm going to downsize your business before you even started it down to from the 300 tons to 150, and that's only going to be an extra 12 trucks a day going down my road. And we're not talking about the smaller trucks, we're talking about the big haulers. Now on B&B Lane, there are other businesses in there. Most of them leave in the morning and return at 5 o'clock at night. There's very little hauling going in and out of B&B Lane at this point. So I'm not against what you're doing. And to be honest with you, I know some other people are concerned about the ups and downs of what the recycling's doing. I don't care. To be honest with you, it doesn't make any difference in my pocket. You know, I hope you're a profitable business.
I think you have a good business, because we do need recycling, because every day my kid never empties the recycling out of my kitchen, so someone's got to get rid of it, and and I think that's not a bad business. It's just the location, in my opinion, isn't the right location. And I'm just a dumb country boy anyways, but I don't know what the difference between municipal solid waste and garbage is. To me, it's the same thing. And right here in our own towns, industrial zoning 25.4.9 says non-permitted use, animal reduction, or garbage dumping. That's right in our own Article 25 in industrial, which is what it is. So, like I said, if municipal solid waste isn't garbage, then this doesn't apply. But if it is, I think you called it trash, I call it garbage. It's all the same.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Gabe Braley.
Gabe Braley, 3 Carolyn Place. I want to thank you for your time, for coming in. It's a tough audience to come into. You're trying to do some recycling, and that in general is good. I guess my comments is more to the planning board. I get the points with the traffic. I get the points with things expanding more than you wanted. From my perspective, I live off of Carolyn Place. I don't want anything in my aquifer. So I don't care how small it is. I don't want it. So, Marty, my request to you would be to look for a different site that's not near an aquifer, and not near mine. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Braley. Selma. I'm not sure I can read this. Would you help me out with your name, please, Selma?
Yes. Selma Alabas at 65 Oak Ridge Road.
Thank you.
To the speaker's last point, a few years ago I was talking with a gentleman in our area named Gordon Russell, and he's held with high regard. I think he founded the Piscataqua Water Association. He's fought to protect our watersheds in this area, and on a separate conversation there was a great amount of clear cutting that was going on in the neighborhood behind me, which fed into the wetland on the other side of this industrial park. And he brought up the fact that that industrial park sits on a very sensitive wetland, watershed, aquifer area. If you look at the map there, it's totally surrounded by water. And this, a few years ago, he said to me that industrial park should have never been approved. It's in a very sensitive spot. It's not only in a residential area, but it's in this watershed area. And so not only should the industrial park be there to begin with, but the last thing we should be doing is hauling in and out of this sensitive area that has low water tables, where there's already been a contaminated well because of that potential hazardous waste. So that's my concern. In addition to impacting the homeowners, although I don't live directly on Gould Road, I hear the noise echo up from 77 from the trucks right now, across the wetland up to the hill where I live, loud and clear. And I couldn't imagine being a resident living on Gould Road and dealing with the traffic that's already going on the road, now dealing with heavy trucks in addition. But my prime concern is the environmental and impact on the watershed. Thank you.
Thank you. David Hubbard, please. Hibbard. I'm sorry, I misread that.
David Hibbard, 14 Gould Road, Weare, New Hampshire.
I'm going to ask you to tip the microphone up, please, so we can catch your voice.
How about that?
That's better.
Okay.
Thank
David
you.
Hibbard, 14 Gould Road, Weare, New Hampshire. You're taking an awful beating tonight. I'm sorry about that, but it's the truth. I only have one thing that I have to warn you about is when that industrial park was established, I was there. And the hours of operation for that industrial park are 7 to 5, period. So anything going in and out of there can be stopped at the door. That's in the minutes of the meeting from 1986, and nobody's changed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hibbard. We're back to Jack Dearborn. You're complete. Understood. You're exhausted. We also have Tim Matheson up for recirculation. Mr. Matheson.
I just want to know if the DES would do a trial basis. The worst case scenario, they do a trial basis with the conditions, but how likely is it that they will fail?
A trial.
So you said there was 3 parameters, that they would actually pass, they'd be on condition, and
Okay.
another one there, I think.
Yeah, so our options for responding to an application are to deny it outright, approve it outright, or approve it with conditions.
With the planning board's conditions?
Well, with conditions that we would put and we would enforce. Yes.
We also have Jan Snyder coming up again, please. Or you haven't yet, so.
No, I haven't. Jan Snyder, 10 Thorndike Road. I believe one of the conditions that the planning board had put on was to have the well done annually. Was the well tested this year? It was. Okay, and was it okay?
I'm going to give you the microphone, Mr. O'Brien.
I do have the well tested over there on the table over there. I do believe they came out the same with
the
magnesium
iron,
and
yeah,
iron.
on
Yep.
iron content,
Yep.
okay.
That's an annual thing that we have
All
to
right,
do.
I just wanted to make sure that it had been done.
Yes, we did.
Okay,
Thank you.
So I've run out of yellow cards. I have someone raising their hand. I'm going to have you speak and then fill out a yellow card because we want to know who the speakers are too in writing. So please come up and identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Sharon Zarnicki. I live on Newman Wilson Road. I have a question that kind of goes back to something Mr. Moore said that I just haven't heard explained here tonight. When you were talking about this, you mentioned some figures and you said that aquifer isn't a such and such type, so we're not concerned with it. Can you give us more information on that? I mean, we're all concerned about water, but DES has decided this water's not a worry?
Yeah, and I think similar to the response earlier, I apologize if I gave the impression that because of the type of aquifer, we're not worried about it. What I'm saying is there are different requirements for different types of aquifers. There's a baseline. A lot of our requirements are directed at protecting groundwater and surface water. Would apply across the board, no matter where it was in the state. So there are a lot of our regulations, like I said, are directed at protecting groundwater and surface water, regardless of its location.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for filling out a yellow card. It's a long evening. So we have come to the conclusion of the the oral comments. And seeing no one else, I'm going to hereby close the hearing formally. It is by the clock here in the cafetorium, 10:05. So I've been feeling a little under the weather. I apologize. My voice isn't usually this low, but I'm going to remind you that written comments can be submitted to the department on or before June 13th at 4 p.m. We accept the comments by fax or email, and directions are on the public notice that are over on the table. I think it's the third or fourth paragraph down. When DES issues a final decision, it will be publicly available on our website. If you provided testimony, you will be automatically included on the notification list based on the contact information you put on the yellow testimony card. If you did not fill out a yellow testimony card tonight but would like to receive a copy of the written decision when it's issued, please legibly provide your contact information on the sign-out sheet at the table to my right. For the record, I just wanted to add that the change in location was posted prominently on the town's website. I forgot to say that, and we thank the town for their assistance in managing to get us a better location with better accommodations for you all. Thank you so much for coming tonight, taking the time to express your interest in the department's permitting process. We appreciate your comments, and with that, I am really now closing the hearing. Thank you.